Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, I'm checking out this new album from Post Malone, F1 Trillion. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So Post Malone's sixth studio album, F1 Trillion, was released last Friday, August 16th. And now that I've had a week to sit down and listen to this thing multiple times, I'm going to kind of go through it and give you some of my thoughts on this album. So this is a follow-up to Post Malone's album, Austin, which he released last year. And Austin was the album that really got me into Post Malone's music. I've been kind of a casual fan over the years, but it was really that album that really kind of pulled me in. And what really kind of separated that, I think, that album from the rest of his albums is Austin is the first album that Post Malone put together and released without any features on there. And that's one of the first things I noticed about F1 Trillion is there's only 3 tracks on this album that don't have somebody else on the track. I guess I should preface all this by saying that I'm not a country music fan. I never really have been. I grew up listening to, in the 80s, my parents listened to like Alabama, bands like that. So I kind of grew up on some country music. In the 90s, I did listen to Garth Brooks. I still listen to Garth Brooks occasionally now. But really, like after like the middle part of the 90s, I really lost interest in country music. I do like some country songs over the last 20, 25 years. But I think overall, really over the last, I'd say 20 years, like after like 2005, 2008, country music really, I think, kind of lost its soul and has become really nothing more than like, I call it Southern pop music now. Post Malone's been kind of teasing this country album out for, I'd say at least the last year or so, is kind of when it really kind of picked up steam. So to put this album together, he really pulled in a bunch of, it's like a who's who of country music on this album. You got appearances by Tim McGraw, Hank Williams Jr., Morgan Wallen, Dolly Parton, Brad Paisley, and a bunch more. Chris Stapleton's on here also. Basically like I said, a who's who of country music in the 2020s. He does a great job crafting these songs. I will say that this doesn't really sound like, I mean, in some ways it does sound like a modern country album, but I think in a lot of ways it also sounds like this could be straight out of the 90s, early 2000s. Has some kind of, Post Malone grew up in Texas and listened to a lot of outlaw country, listened to a lot of 90s country, and I think like those two influences really kind of pull through on this album. And while I think this is a really enjoyable album, I think some of the features on here I don't think really work well with Post Malone and kind of the style of country music Post Malone does on this album. Where, like I said, I think some of them work great, but like, I don't know. I think where he really shines on this album is a couple of those tracks where it's just Post Malone. He doesn't have any features on here. And I think that's kind of where I think he kind of went wrong on this album. I think had he kind of cut back on some of the features, it really kind of focused a little bit more on those solo efforts. I think the album might have shined a little bit more than it does. There are times during this album where it kind of feels a little formulaic. Like they sat down and said, okay, what is an outline for a successful country album or country song in the 2000s? And let's kind of repeat that. And I kind of feel, there's some tracks on this album are like that. But even those tracks that are kind of formulaic still are actually pretty good tracks. I know there's been a lot of comparisons over the week between this album and Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, because it's two artists from different genres that have made country albums. And I think like the big difference between those two albums is, and why I'm not a big fan of Cowboy Carter, I think F1 Trillion is a better album than Cowboy Carter. I give Beyonce a lot of credit for really trying to stretch her wings and do some different things creatively on that album. And I feel like F1 Trillion is really kind of plays it safe at times. And that could be the intent on this album, just to have a kind of a straightforward country album. It is good. I'm not saying, I don't want people to think I'm going to give this album a bad review. I think it's a decent album. I just think that there's different ways they could have done things on this album that might have made it a little bit better of an album. Even though it seems a little formulaic at times, it is a good album. Post Malone knows how to write a really catchy song. So the way they kicked off the album is with Wrong Ones, which is a song with Tim McGraw. I think it's one of the stronger tracks on the album. I think it's a great pick to kick this album off. And I really like the way that him and Tim McGraw play off each other in the song. Another track that I really enjoyed on the album is Have a Heart with Dolly Parton. Of course, you have Dolly Parton on a track. It's, she's an absolute legend. She's going to up the quality of the track every single time. I love how they work together. I love the song overall, the structure of it. I think it's one of the better songs on the album, and it still kind of has a little bit of that like old school feel to it. So after listening to this album multiple times, I think the one track that kind of stands out above all the other ones, even though there's, it was kind of in the running, there's like 3 or 4 tracks I was kind of going back and forth on what I felt was the best track on this album. I think the best track is a track with Post all by himself. He doesn't have any features on it. And that's the track What Don't Belong to Me. It's one I go back to multiple times. That's going to pull me back into this album. And so, like I said, it is a good track. There's some other good tracks on here also. Some other favorites on here. Pour Me a Drink, Losers with Jelly Roll, Never Love You Again was another great track. I think, like, overall, like I said, I don't think there's anything really skippable on this album. It's just, I wish, like, creatively, I think he would have taken a little bit more chances on some of these tracks. The one thing I can say about Post Malone is I think he's probably one of the most genuine people in music today. I know this has been a passion project for him over the last year or so. I'm glad to finally see this whole thing kind of come together and him release it. And, I just can't wait to see what he's going to do next. There's also an extended version of this album. It's called the Long Bed Edition. It's got an additional 9 tracks on it. I will say that for the price of this album, I really think that those 9 tracks should have been included. It's not a cheap album, and that's kind of like one of my big knocks on this album is it's 2 LPs, but $50 for an album is just, it's obscene. I know I've made comments on social media that, if you're going back and forth between the vinyl version and the CD, you can pick up the CD for $15. There's no reason that this album should be $50. So as far as grading this album, scale 1 to 10, I went back and forth on this. I'm going to give it a 7. Which I think it's a really good album. Is it an album that's going to end the year in my top 5? Probably not. But, who knows? It might grow on me, over the next coming months. But, it is a really good, solid album. Especially somebody who he's not a country musician. He does rap. He's done a lot of other things in his career, but he's not done country music. So it's kind of interesting to see him make that transition on this album. And I'm just interested to see what he's going to do next. So as far as the physical version of this album, yes, as much as I complained about the price of it, I still bought a copy of it. So I guess to answer my question earlier about why is this album $50, because people like me will buy it. So I did pick it up. There's multiple versions of this album. There was an indie exclusive that was on like green vinyl, a couple other colors. It was a clear version. I ended up going with a Target exclusive, which is on silver vinyl. I'll open this up real quick and show you the album. There's like I said, just plain silver, nothing fancy about it. I just thought the color of this one kind of went better with the album cover. And now that I got it out of the resealable sleeve there, you can see the cover of it a little better. There's the front cover. There's the back cover. F1 Trillion, it's got the track listing up at the top. And then this is on a gatefold also. There's the inside of the gatefold there. And then these came with, for $50, at least you got printed inner sleeves. Both of them look like that, just have a track listing on the sides of it. And then it does have a fold-out poster that comes along with it also. I'm not going to open it all up. It's just all the lyrics on one side. And then on the back side of it, just a bunch of pictures from the photo shoot for the cover. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Love to know what you guys think of this album. Have you listened to it yet? Have you picked up a copy of it? What would you rate F1 Trillion by Post Malone? It's an album that, I've listened to it several times since it was released last week. Streamed it a couple times. I've listened to it a couple times on vinyl. And as someone who's not the biggest country music fan, I can see myself listening to this album more often. So I'm interested to see where this album lands on my top 10, top 20 at the end of the year. But let me know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.